I'm Ace Buchan. I'm a professional surfer from the Central Coast. Growing up on the Central Coast was a dream for a young kid that loved the ocean as much as I did and had this amazing playground to go and explore, to kind of have the chance to wake up and, watch the sunrise, pre-dawn light kind of turn into those beautiful blue and pink hues. Nature, in the way that it was kind of intended is really special. The beaches and the space that we have on the Central Coast has given me a lot of clarity, and it's kept me grounded. It's kept my keel upright when things have gone a little bit crazy in my life, and being able to glide along the face of a moving piece of ocean that's been generated hundreds of thousands of miles away, it's a feeling like no other. One of the things I really love about the Central Coast is that there are these beautiful kind of swathes of land that have been declared national parks, and as a child I was lucky enough to start experiencing that with my parents. To now go and do that with my kids is really special. Being able to kind of walk through the bush and not see anyone else and just kind of listen to the sounds and sometimes just drop the surfboards and go exploring, I feel pretty lucky to have access to. For tens of thousands of years, people have inhabited this land and looked after it and cared for it, and we need to respect this beautiful playground that we've been lucky enough to call home. It's something pretty special.
Right, well, good evening, everybody. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. Welcome to the 8th of February Council meeting. It's an ordinary meeting and I will now declare the meeting open. Just a reminder for those who are participating that your image and what you say will be recorded and broadcast live to the public, so just please be mindful of that. And obviously, we'd like you to avoid making any defamatory statements or offending anybody, and note the council will not be responsible for any it won't be responsible for any of those actions. From a COVID point of view, please just remain seated and not move around too much. And I note everybody's wearing a mask, which is fabulous. Now, there's been quite a bit of activity going on, and I would just remind the community that we did have an extraordinary council meeting last week where council resolved to apply to IPART, which is the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal. We applied there to maintain the rates at their current levels for a further 7 years after the 3 years have expired for this one. That makes a total of 10 years that we have sought for that particular rate structure that is in place now to stay in place. So I can actually now confirm that with 10 minutes to spare, we managed to get our very, very lengthy documents uploaded with the 20-odd attachments to it uploaded and into the IPART system. So they will be, no doubt, putting all that on their website. And I certainly invite people to comment further if they haven't had a chance to look at things. Please look at what will be on the IPART website, and you're free and welcome to make any comments that you feel fit to make. It is important to note that we are only asking to keep the rates at the level that they are right as we speak. If we are not successful, then it is a pretty stark choice. It is a question, if we are not successful in maintaining the rates, then we will actually breach the conditions we have with the bank. And clearly, I am not going to allow the council to go into an insolvent position again. So we will need to just reduce our cost structure down to match the new rating income that we would get. So I've been very clear right from pretty soon after that IPART gave us the last determination that 3 years didn't cut it. We now need the extra time to be able to repay the $150 million of loans, which will be funded out of the sale of assets and the surpluses that are generated over the next 10-year period. So with that, that's back. School's back, that's another thing, and on my trip, it's lengthened my trip up from Bayview. It's lengthened my trip up quite considerably with the school zones back in force. So just please take note that they are in force and that be careful around the school zones. Use the designated drop-off pickup points, particularly note the no parking or parking stops because they're there to minimise traffic congestion. And when you definitely see these flashing lights on the back of buses, slow down to the 40k and watch out for the children crossing because it's clearly, as history has shown us, unfortunately, there are always, every year, people that get knocked around quite badly by cars around the drop-off points. The Tuggerawong shared path, pre-construction works on stage 1 of that shared path has commenced this week, and physical construction of stage 3 between February Street and March Street will follow shortly thereafter. I think in a couple of weeks' time, the CEO and I are going to go for a bit of a wander along it, walk along it, so we'll see it firsthand then. And we've had some awards announced of late, and that was the Central Coast Council's Marketing and Tourist team received a bronze award in the Local Government Award Tourism category at the New South Wales Tourism Awards 2021. Now that's a fabulous achievement given, one, our situation during that period, and two, I guess our lack of resources. So to actually pick up a bronze in that category is an outstanding effort for the staff involved in that. So congratulations to all of them. And we should also not forget and congratulate the Australian Reptile Park, which actually received a silver award in the category for major tourist attraction, and the Ibis Styles, the entrance, received a bronze award in the category 4.5 star accommodation area. So receiving that bronze award for us actually adds to the region's growing list of accolades, which is also driven by Council and Destination Central Coast, because we also were the only New South Wales destination named in Green Destinations International 2021 Top 100 Destination Sustainability Stories list, winning the most compelling itinerary in the New South Wales Top Tourism Town Awards 2021. And the entrance was actually named a finalist in What If's Aussie Town of the Year Awards 2021. So those are pretty good achievements for a region that's been in our situation with COVID and bushfires and Council's demise over the previous period. Now I note in the open forum that we don't have any speakers, so there was no request, so we'll move past that. In the public forum, I note that we have one community member registered to speak, and I thank that member for sending in a summary of what they wish to talk about. That's always very helpful and certainly allows, when staff respond, the ability to actually have done some research. And that speaker will bring to it when we come to that item. So we'll now move on to the council agenda, and item 1.1 is disclosures of interest. I have no items to disclose. I don't believe any of the directors have, so that's all good. So we'll now resolve to adopt the resolution that is shown on the screen. Item 1.2, the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Now that was the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the council held on the 25th of January and the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 3rd of February. So both those sets of minutes, I was obviously present through those, and I've checked the minutes and I'm comfortable that they do reflect a full and accurate record. So with that, I'll resolve to adopt the resolution as shown on the screen. Item 1.3, which is the notice of intention to deal with matters in closed session. We don't have any matters to discuss, so I'll just ask that council note that no matters have been tabled to deal with in a closed session and make that as a decision of council. We move to the substantive part of the agenda, and we do have a relatively short agenda tonight. So item number 1 there is item 2.1, which is the Central Coast Airport Master Plan, the Community Engagement Report. And I'll just ask Ms. Cowley, the Director of Corporate Affairs and CFO, to actually just talk a little bit about it, because it was actually a very solid piece of work, and it's given a pretty outstanding conclusion, I have to say. Ms. Cowley.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I've got a presentation, a very short presentation on the screen, and if we go on to the next slide, thank you. The purpose of this report, as the Administrator mentioned, is to provide an update on the outcome of the community consultation undertaken by Wolcott Research and Engagement relating to the Central Coast Airport Master Plan, and to seek approval to progress the Central Coast Airport Development Framework, part of which includes undertaking a request for information to understand the demand requirements on the airport. This critical information will further inform the development of the master plan. We go on to the next slide, and I'm sorry, the writing is probably difficult to read, but it is all included in the report. A quantitative study was conducted which comprised 602 mixed mode interviews with Central Coast Council residents aged 18 years and older. We had 310 telephone interviews, 192 online panels, and 100 SMS to online interviews. So out of the 602, 75% provided a mild to strong support. 40% provided strong support and 35% provided mild support. So there was an overwhelming 75% final support of the concept. We go on to the next slide. It is the recommendation is that council does note this positive feedback of 75% support for the Central Coast Airport Master Plan received during the consultation period, and that we authorise the staff to proceed to Gateway 1 and 2. Subject to this council resolution, the request for information will open on 9th of February 2022 and close on the 31st of March 2022. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Ms. Carley. Yes, I note that the decision to actually kick this off was made in April last year. And I think it is going to be a fabulous project. It does have massive potential to produce jobs, and it's we'll look at integrated aviation, manufacturing, research, and education. So with those sort of things there, the jobs that can be created will be quite special. And I think that's one very good reason, and I'm pleased to see that when that's put to the community, that we did end up with, I think it was 75% actually supporting the development of the master plan on that basis. So I'm very happy to authorise the council to proceed to the Gateways 1 and 2 to undertake that RFI, and which will go to the general aviation industry and other interested parties just to see where we go for the next steps. So with that, I will actually move those recommendations and resolve to adopt those resolutions as shown on the screen. Item 2.2, which is the Chain Valley Colliery Delta Coal Community Funding Program. Now, I was not familiar with this until I saw this paper, but it's the result of a voluntary planning agreement between the Delta Coal Company and the council at the time to get their, their approval. So they came up with a voluntary agreement, which was to provide on a per so many cents per tonne of coal produced to make that available to the community through the community funding program. So the representatives who are on that panel, which includes themselves and council staff, have made the recommendations. So I'm very happy to adopt those, and it's good to see that a VPA has actually been put to benefit for the community on a wider sense. So those people in Summerland Point, Gwandolin, Chain Valley Bay and Mannering Park are all going to benefit from that funding program. So I will allocate the $53,000 to that program and move the recommendations that are shown on the screen. Item 2.3 is the Community Support Grant Program for October and November. This is an ongoing program, and the total budget for it is about $300,000. So this is the next tranche. And again, I'm delighted to be able to make that available to those recipients. So with that, I'm going to resolve to adopt the resolutions that are shown on the screen. Item 2.4, which are the minutes of the advisory group and committee meetings held in November and December. There's no recommendations from those minutes to the council. So with that, I'm just going to resolve to note the minutes of the advisory group and committee meetings that were held in November and December. So I'll move those as shown on the screen. Item 2.5 is minutes of the Coastal Open Space System Committee meeting held on the 13th of December. Now we do have one public speaker for that, so I'd like to invite Mr. Leif Arnbach to come up and speak. You have 3 minutes and a bell will sound at the end of that, and then I'd ask you to finish up at that point of time.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator and the Council Executive, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening regarding the COS Committee recommendation. Specifically recommendation 3, rejection of mountain bike trails being established in COS land or being identified for inclusion in COS land as part of the Central Coast Mountain Biking Plan. My first point is to reject completely the notion that mountain biking is not compatible with coast lands. Mountain bikers have been riding in coast lands for over 30 years. Mountain biking has been shown to be one of the most ecologically sustainable forms of recreation available, with an environmental footprint very similar to that of bushwalking. The recommendation is also completely counterproductive and at odds with the COS strategy itself. COS lands are community lands. They are used by tens of thousands of Central Coast residents every year for the purpose of recreation. The land is for all to enjoy. It is for both conservation and recreation. The COS strategy outlines what activities are acceptable within COS lands. Mountain biking is clearly stated as a permitted activity. Recently, Mr. Administrator, you approved moving forward a plan for the development of a mountain biking strategy for the Central Coast. Part of that plan is the creation of a working group. Mr. Administrator, when you agreed to the mountain bike plan, you were very clear that the group would be comprised of multiple stakeholders, including environmentalists, tourism, traditional owners and mountain bikers. This was done, and rightly so, to ensure that the mountain bike strategy would be balanced and workable for all. In essence, a broad selection of people with different expertise will provide Council with more consistent and relevant advice on which to move forward. I believe this thinking should be applied to the COS Committee. The COS Committee provides advice to Council on the management of 6,000 hectares of bushland on the Central Coast, land that is used daily by thousands of coasties for recreation, land that has been touted by many as being ideal for ecotourism. Unlike the Mountain Bike Working Group, the COS Committee does not have balance in membership, nor do the members have specific knowledge of many forms of recreation or tourism opportunities. In short, the advisory group cannot provide balanced, insightful advice to Council on a range of issues that are intrinsic to COS lands. COS lands are there for everyone, and the advisory group providing recommendations on management and strategy to Council should reflect this diversity of needs. I would request that the Administrator, considering the counterproductive recommendation, create balance within the COS Committee by installing additional community members to the committee who come from specific backgrounds, who can provide insight to the committee on areas of recreation and tourism. Furthermore, I would request an amendment to the terms of reference to broaden the scope of the committee to provide advice on how to best integrate ecotourism and recreation opportunities into COS lands whilst maintaining the land's biodiversity values. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and as I said, thank you for your written submission. It does always make it a lot easier and better when those come forward. I'm just going to ask Mr. Milliken, who's the Acting Director of Environment and Planning, just to respond and to add some comments to the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. So the COS Committee met on the 13th of December 2021, and they made 3 recommendations. The recommendation for Council tonight is to accept 2 of the recommendations and note the third. In relation to the recommendation to write to the Minister regarding land left off the list for National Parks and Wildlife Service land transfers, that recommendation is recommended to be accepted. And it's also recommended that Council accept the Committee's recommendation regarding land clearing on deferred matters land. In terms of the Committee's recommendation for mountain biking in COSland, it is recommended that Council note the recommendation but not adopt it. On the 14th of December 2021, Council resolved to undertake a mountain biking plan and referred to the working group that the Speaker spoke about. The issues related to the COS Committee, the recommendation of the COS Committee, were raised by speakers at the Council meeting on the 14th and were considered as part of Council's consideration of that item. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Mr. Armbuckle, I'd like to ask if you could just move the back away from the mic, thanks. As well as the submission you've just heard, I have also received 2 or 3 emails in a similar vein, I might add, suggesting that that there should be a wider and more representative group looking at things, which I guess, having seen the written submission, and I guess also having got, if you like, our IPART applications out of the way for the moment, the time is coming where we can start to focus on how can we make some improvements in how things are done. In the previous councils I've been associated with, there's always been a lot of debate amongst councillors and mayors and senior staff as to the value of committees and strategic reference groups and other entities. And I think that the general intent is to actually have committees or strategic reference groups or groups of community to actually help the council come to a conclusion. And I think what this one has just amply demonstrated, we have two groups, one who look at mountain biking, one who look at the environmental side with the coast lands, and we get two different views coming to council. So for quite a lot of expense and time, there is no resolution or agreement or even, points which they might be able to agree on between the two groups. So I'm just going to flag that I think there probably are better ways to go forward. I have to say I do have some thoughts in mind, but I'd like to think about that a little bit more, and then I will think about possibly asking the staff to think about some potential structures. But I have to say it's probably fair to say that the current committee structure certainly doesn't seem to have helped the council dramatically. And as I said, the intention to have people involved from the community, in whether they're strategic reference groups or whether they're committees or whatever, is to help the council come to a conclusion. And it's very difficult when you get, like the old saying, one size fits all. You get one particular group of people getting together because you kind of know what the answer is going to be, just as you know you get another group of people together, and again, you kind of know what the answer is going to be, but how do you bring it together? So as I said, I want to take some time to think about what we can do there and think about whether we can refresh the committee structure or whether there are strategic reference groups or something along those lines. And then we can have a bit of a discussion, and obviously we'll have that discussion with the community as well. But as I said, the intent and the cost of these things should help a council come to a conclusion which may not meet in the middle, but at least is representative of the views that have been articulated. And just having people just saying their individual views and having formal structures with formal costs associated with that doesn't necessarily and doesn't appear to have helped dramatically. As I said, this is just one example which tends to demonstrate that. So with those comments, I'm comfortable with the resolutions that have been put up, and I intend to resolve to adopt those resolutions as shown on the screen. And with that, that concludes, with only the sort of 4 or 5 items, that concludes the council meeting for tonight. So we'll close the meeting at 6:55 p.m. And with that, I bid everyone good night.